Okay, so can you hear me? Hold on. Hi everyone, can you hear me? Great, awesome, thank you. Okay, so trellising, I think we want to spend like most of the time doing the tour because that's going to be the most effective way of giving examples versus like showing pictures or something. So I will just show some materials that I have. So a lot of trellises are made out of either metal or wood stakes, and then in different shapes. They could be tomato cages like what you see in the background, but actually a lot of trellises you can make yourself with stakes. So this is a pretty standard one that is a little bit more long lasting, though they can rust. These are called T-posts, and you can get them at most hardware stores. You just ask for T-posts. You can also find something called Rebar, which I don't have right now, but it's also like, it's like coated in plastic, but it's just like a metal rod that's like kind of has coated ridged plastic. And those are usually a little cheaper. These are about like $3 each. So it depends how many you need to get. And then they go up to like $5 because usually these are quite short. I'm actually going to return these because it was like an experiment. But I usually would want to get something that's like about 8 feet tall, because most things that are trellis, like beans or peas or tomatoes or cucumbers, are all things like the more height you give them, the higher they'll grow, essentially. So the more space, or like even with melons, the more space that you give them to grow, the more they'll reach out and the more fruits they'll make. So this is a good option. They have these like wings, and those you want to make sure those are submerged in the ground, and that'll make it really stick in the ground. So think about this, these are 3 feet, but you're gonna lose a bunch of that height. So any stake that you have, you're gonna lose almost a foot of it being in the ground. So you want to get really long stakes. So that's that. Another kind of stake that I brought is wood stakes, which you can also get at a lot of hardware stores, or you could like talk to you might be able to like find them on FreeCycle, or source them from some wood shop that has extra wood that they're not using. Those bamboo stakes, which we'll see examples of, are often for sale. They're a little bit less strong. These are really nice because they're a little bit thicker. It's nice to get them. The downside is that after a couple of years, they rot at the bottom, but they do last quite a few years. And what's nice is you don't really need the ridges on them because the wood like holds onto the string really well. And so we end up like with larger scale gardening, we'll get a bunch of these every couple of years, and you can make a lot of different shapes with this. So I brought a couple, and I wanted to show you a couple of examples. Whether you have wood or metal stakes, you can also use a metal conduit, which is actually, I like bought some at an electrical store, which is funny. They thought it was really funny that I was like going in for gardening purposes, but it's actually just like tubes that you would put electrical wires in, but they're actually really easy to cut with a saw, and those last forever. Oh yeah, well, amazing, thank you. So Eric's pointing out different examples of all the things that we're talking about, so we'll be able to show you those later. And so those are really sturdy, and they come at 10 feet increments. I don't know if you can see in the background. We'll go up closer. So that's really, really tall, but you can cut them like with a saw. And those are also about like $3 or $4 each piece. And then plus side of those is they really last, like they don't rust. They last a really long time, and they're lightweight, and they're very, like the fact that you can cut them is nice, because like with these, the T-posts, you can't cut them. So this is more of an investment. I think it might be like $30 or $40. A lot of hardware stores or like agriculture stores will sell them. It's a stake pounder. It's pretty heavy. I don't know if you guys want to try lifting it or no. Okay, no. But this is like, if you're very serious about getting your stakes like deep in the ground, you could invest in this. And the nice thing about it, and I will demonstrate, is it has like a hole in the bottom. And so it goes in here, and you actually don't have to put that much effort because it's so heavy. You just like let it drop. So that's a really nice thing to have really stuck in the ground stakes. If you don't have one of these, also a really big rock or actually a mallet is a good investment. You just hit the top. The nice thing about this also, other than a mallet though, is if you're kind of shorter like me, if you have an 8-foot stake, I wouldn't actually be able to like hit a mallet up 8 feet. But with this, it's like, even if it starts tall, it goes down. So even if it was 8 feet, I like would be able to reach it. So I'm gonna do a quick demonstration in this garden over here, like how I might make a trellis, but honestly, the best examples are in this garden. And so we'll talk about those too. So usually what I make trellises out of are these wooden stakes or these T-posts, and I use twine. Twine is nice because it's biodegradable. It's often made, it's made out of like plant materials. So when you're breaking down your garden at the end of the season, you don't have to worry about like a little piece still in the garden just staying there forever. Sometimes the plastic string works a little better, but the twine works pretty well. You just have to make sure you tie it really, really tight. And you can get these at most hardware stores, so twine. So I'm gonna try to assemble a couple. So the most simple trellis would be just like essentially like a fence. So I can show you, like, there's actually a really great rock right here. Nice flat rock, and I can just, oh shit. I guess I'm gonna have to keep that. I just realized I would So I'm gonna also show you with the stake pounder, because it's definitely easier. So that was a lot easier than the rock. And so I'm like an advertisement for the stake pounder, but it does like make it a lot easier because this thing's so heavy. I don't actually have to work that hard. And so then I usually pound it until the wings are in the ground. And so I would do the same with this. I don't know if I'm actually going to pound that one in just for demonstration. But basically for pounding, the deeper you get it, the better. Like if you are worried it's too loose, like you want to try to get it deeper. And sometimes you can pound it a little more, like wait a little bit, pound it a little more. I find after it rains, the soil's a little softer. So a very standard trellis would be, the nice thing about the T-post is like I would make sort of ladder rungs here. So it's always silly doing this as a demonstration because I'm going to construct it. So you could just do rungs of a ladder, but honestly, the other thing is the more string, the more options that the plants have to climb onto, the better they're going to grow. So some people actually do like diagonal lines, like you could do like this and then probably would have better found this one in retrospect. This is just to be clear, as you're tying the string, you want to make sure it's as tight as possible. This is not a good demonstration, but it's because the snake isn't fully in the ground. And so I might do a zigzag this way and then do another one that makes X's so that you have as much places for the plant to climb up. Or what you could do is kind of make a grid. So you could do horizontal lines, and then you could tie vertical lines in between the horizontal lines. So some people buy that plastic netting. It looks like a soccer net and it's just a grid. You can often actually find recycled soccer netting. Like you could ask someone if they have you could like ask a school or ask someone if they have old soccer net, and then that's actually really good trellising, and it's made out of cloth, and you don't have to buy it, and it's like recycled material. There's a lot of, I always say this during workshops, there's a lot of Facebook groups for anyone who wants to venture into Facebook, or you could probably find on like Craigslist or something. But on Facebook, there's a really great like everything free, and then or free buy nothing, they're usually called. And there's one for like every neighborhood in Boston. So you would say everything free, like Roxbury, and then you would be like, does anyone have old soccer netting? And you would be so surprised. Like sometimes you just really find, and it's also great if you want to get rid of stuff too. So that's a great way to find recycled materials. For you could be like, does anyone have old pipes that they like don't need? I want to use that for my trellis or something. So so that's great. So this is a really nice thing for that kind of trellis, and that would be good for beans or peas. It could be good maybe for cucumbers. They like to grow vertically, though sometimes cucumbers like to grow kind of slanted. Another thing that you could do is for tomatoes. There's one trellis. It's called Florida weave, because it's how like large scale tomato farmers. So if you have like in a big garden like this, if you don't want to buy a ton of tomato cages, something you can do is have two. You want to have really sturdy, like I would definitely get the metal posts, tall ones, and then basically you get your string, and really tight you go, like you weave between the tomatoes. So you'll go on one side of the tomato. So you have like, let's say you have like 3 tomatoes in a row. You could go like on the left side, on the right side, on the left side, on the right side, and you weave, and then you go the other way around and you weave on the other side. So basically there's string on either side of the tomato that's holding it up. And then you do multiple layers as the tomato gets taller. So that's much less materials than buying all those tomato cages. So you really want to make sure your string is tight for that, for it to work. But it can work really well as long as you're like on top of it. Also for tomatoes, you could do 4 stakes and basically make a box and then tie string almost like a cage around it. But you don't need it for each one. You could just have a box for like 4, and then you basically make like walls of horizontal string to hold them up, and like the arms of the tomatoes can sort of poke out of that. So that's nice. And you could use some of this like metal wire for that too. So those are different options. I want to show you something. So if you know your steak is good if it's hard to get it out afterwards. So with the wood, another great trellis, like especially for things like cucumbers like to grow, and maybe also melons like to grow at a slant. So I would make a teepee, like the 3-walled teepee, and that's a really great way. So the way I would do the teepee, I'll do it with a rock just to show you. So you're gonna like you can make them as small or as big as you want, you know, as wide or as narrow as you want. So I'm not pounding all the way. I'm trying to just demonstrate, but you would want to pound these like really deeply. This is a great one, even if you're growing in like a pot on your porch. This is a great option. You could even do this like much smaller, not as wide, but you could do this in a pot. Maybe with the bamboo stakes instead of the wooden ones, like thinner stakes. Oh, that's nice of you. It's definitely a little challenging. That's where I do think the steak pounder is a nice thing. So then after that, you would take your twine and then you would like, you want to really tightly wrap the top pieces. So you might wrap it all the way around and then also sort of go in between a little bit so that it's really tight. So you do that a couple of times. Make sure that it's really secure. So that, and then once again, you would do those same rungs, like all the way to the bottom. And one thing to note is that the bottom rung should be relatively low so the plant doesn't have to climb too much. But often you might be transplanting, like for instance, a cucumber. If it's this long, then just make the rung like right where the plant is gonna reach it. And then the last one that I like to do for beans or tomatoes or something like that is to make like a tent. So I would do two, you know, like the tent shape. I'll just do a quick demo. So it's okay. So it's kind of like two mini teepees a little bit. So once again, I would tie each top part like tightly together, and then so this could be much wider. Like I just made it narrow so you can see it. So once these are tied together, you can like rest something like this. It's really a tent, like, and so then after that you can do the rungs, or you can even, yeah, I mean that's sort of what I would do is like different rungs. Use your netting, use whatever you're using, and this is great for cucumbers, beans. Honestly, it could also even be for tomatoes. And one thing that might be interesting is like some plants like to be trellised, like you just like hang a string and then they climb up that. So like in a greenhouse, like the way you grow tomatoes, they just like hang a string down and then they twirl the tomato around the string and the tomato just climbs up the string. So you could make this like really wide and then just have like strings hanging down and the plants would climb up like that. So sometimes just like a vertical pole or a string is a really effective way to have a plant climb up. So that's my demonstration, but I think that it's a very lively night. And I think that it'd be really great to just like walk around a little bit. And I might go back to thank you so much for filming. I might go back to my phone. Does anyone have any questions like in the meantime? Oh. Or can you turn the volume up? Okay, does anyone have any questions about any of that? We're gonna do a little tour. So first, Eric, we're gonna we're gonna walk over here and see these I don't know if you guys want to come like see the things. there. Here. That's nice. But there were stones.
No.
Oh, okay. All right, so now we're going to Eric's garden. Oh yeah, so this is a really great example. Okay, so rebar was the thin piece I mentioned. And so getting conduit in the ground, but as you can see, the conduit is like incredibly tall. And then and this is really rigid. I would call that cow fencing, but you're saying construction. It's like thick metal fencing, and it looks rusty. It seems like it's been used multiple seasons. So you would just keep those.
You go in cement. You bury it in cement.
Okay. Gotcha, thank you. So also used to like shape cement, and you bury cement in it. So very, very very rigid. And so that's great. Instead of string, you just have will grow up that so and even have a root. Plants will go up so they will come over and then the full, and that's a really common technique here. A lot of Chinese gardeners, that's very active, and I've been trying to do more of that for different kinds of melons or you've probably seen them before, and you just typically get one per fruit. And the one thing that's nice about that is it's already done for you. But definitely try to get the taller ones because tomatoes like really grow at least this high. I feel like these ones, they're a little too short. The tomato would like to grow longer. Right, so the determinate tomatoes might not grow as long, and the determinate grow like at least 3 feet. So it's nice to have the taller ones. So this is really nice what you've made. So you can see he's.
I grow French filet beans, which actually grow like.
That sounds great. And you use the T-posts. These are thicker T-posts, and then use this construction fencing, which is great. I definitely think that's an awesome material instead of twine, and drove it into the ground, and then the beans will climb up that, and that would work for a lot of plants. And then you use the same material, tomato cases, which are amazing, and look how tall they are. They're like taller than me, or just about as tall as me, so nice and tall, wrapped around each tomato.
These are indeterminate. That's what they're good.
So the indeterminate tomatoes will grow as long as you want. Yeah.
By September they'll be up to here.
And so you don't do anything, you just let them grow. Got it. So he doesn't do anything other than build these initially. So great. And you use some twist ties to just like hold them together. Amazing. Okay, that's a really great trellis. Did someone build these raised beds?
Yeah.
It makes sense. Okay, why don't we? You can hold it. It's too bad. So people might have missed. I'm just gonna do a quick recap for people who missed it before. But basically, this trellis is made out of that same construction fence. It's really nice, rigid, or cow fence, whatever you want to call it, wire, and then the T-posts, and he attached them with little wires, and he planted beans here. But this would work for a lot of different kinds of plants. And then he used that same wiring for tomato cages. He made his own, and then he said he just doesn't do anything, and he just lets the tomatoes grow in these. And this is great because they're super tall, a lot taller than the other tomato cages. Really good for indeterminate tomatoes, which will grow as tall as you let them. So we'll go check out some other trellises. Those are great. Thank you so much for sharing with us. So yeah, so this is a really nice trellis we looked at before. This is the conduit I was talking about. And then I wanted to go see, yeah, these ones. So yeah, we'll do a little tour of these. So that same concept of having a roof, these look like, so first of all, the zigzag lines. So these are those little bamboo stakes that you can get pretty readily, and sort of making those diagonal lines and making a fence out of them. And then you can definitely see that there's recycled materials here. That looks like maybe from a window or something. So just like finding any recycled materials of like long pieces to hold things together. This looks like old broom handles. It's just amazing, like what you can find, like just recycled materials. So innovative. These are beans that are gonna grow up these trellises, and I think it's just so beautiful. So that's a really nice idea. If you have like thinner materials, you can make more of that like lattice type thing. And then I don't know, yeah, I mean, if anyone's seen these, but these are basically like, you make like a little house. And I'm always intrigued about how the gourds actually get up. Yeah, but I think that like they really do. I guess they like wrap them around. So they've made like an essentially a structure with the diagonal lines and straight lines. And these look like just like recycled pieces of wood. Old tubing. That's why I'm saying like free cycle. Old piping, and then they build a roof. And it looks like these are some materials they're going to use later. And essentially these are for the gourds. They're fuzzy melon typically, or winter melon. So someone was asking about spacing from the trellis. So this is a good indication, or like these beans here, like honestly, as close as you can get without really disrupting the root structure is good. So if you were to individually stake something, you want to just be a couple inches away, so you're not really disrupting the roots when they're young.
Notice, if you think that's not well built, I would neatly.
So yeah, so amazing, and they are really structurally intact. And even the like, I think this is like a kind of tape though, not tape, but like there's like a, I feel like most trellises like this have this like almost ribbon plastic like material, but you could use old, you know, old string, old plastic string, or you could use the twine like I showed earlier. The nice thing about that is it's biodegradable, but this stuff does work really well. And so yeah, here's the same diagonal lines, like recycled materials. Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of what I was saying about the tent though. This is the tent. They actually also have vertical pieces as well, but they have these two like horizontal, or yeah. I think it's super interesting. I guess these gourds can climb up a wider piece of wood. I would have thought that was too narrow. You can see like, what is this, like a rack from a shelf or something? I honestly think if you went on FreeCycle and you're like, does anyone have any long scraps, you know, that you can really make a trellis out of anything? It's super inspiring. This is like old conduit. And so yeah, the sort of tent thing with the horizontal wood. Here's another one, sort of same idea. Yeah. Beans. Oh, and the last thing about it is like utilizing the space between your trellis. So this is going to be kind of shady because you have the two trellises on either side. So this looks like tatsoi, or it's basically like spinach, like some green that's going to be shade tolerant. And the same thing like underneath these houses, that are going to be shaded with all the leaves of the plants, they put shade tolerant like greens essentially. So the greens that's usually too hot to grow them in the summer, you can put them underneath. So this is really cool. I can't say I've necessarily figured out how to do this, but I have like essentially made a roof, and it is really cool how the plants will climb all the way up and hang down. So that's a really nice technique for, you know, works really well for cucumbers and anything that grows really long, if you grow kind of those kinds of things. Yeah, that's about it. Does anyone have any questions? Did you have any questions? Anything you want to try? Let's kind of see if there's chat. Okay. Well, I hope people feel equipped to make some trellises, and you know, good luck with your planting. Definitely check out, I will write in the chat just and I'll show you too, the trustees.org/seed sow is what, that's the link if you want to. Oops, I direct messaged someone. I meant to. So this is the link if you want to find more workshops.
You've been here for 15 years?
All right, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming. Have a great rest of your day.